So I'm going to go ahead and get started and let others join the conversation when they get here. Welcome to the Water Energy Education Alliance Leadership Roundtable number 11. A big welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time, and it's nice to see so many people returning again. Please take a few moments, introduce yourself in the chat. It's easier than doing a roundtable when we have a lot of people in the room. Let us know where you're from and what brings you to our meeting today. And while you do that, I'm going to give a shout out to our 2021 WEEA, 22 WEEA sponsors, as I usually do, because they are the ones who help make all the work that we do possible. So big shout out to Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Molten Miguel Water District, Water Replenishment District of Southern California, California Education, Environmental Education Foundation, Western Municipal Water District, Big Picture Learning, and California Community Colleges. Welcome, everyone. Guidelines, usual guidelines for this type of meeting. Please make sure that your screen name is correct and that you include your organization. It just makes it so much easier for us to be able to call on you when we have your correct name and not a phone number or your spouse or whoever's computer you might be borrowing for the day. We ask that everyone remain muted unless presenting or asking a question. That's pretty standard. That way we don't have a lot of distractions. And as always, we will never host this meeting as a webinar. We just don't believe in them. This is a collaborative. This is a place where we can share ideas freely. We can share resources and we can talk things out. So this is not ever going to be a webinar, but we do ask that you reserve the chat for comments. And if you have a question, you raise your hand via the Zoom app to ask a question. And we've got a lot of great people in the room helping us facilitate this meeting today. Just a reminder, this is our second meeting where closed captioning is available. So if that's something that you need, that's available for you. My name is Tiffany Baca, and I am the Public Affairs Manager for the Municipal Water District of Orange County, and I also lead the Water Energy Education Alliance. I'm also a member of the California Environmental Literacy Initiative Leadership Council, and I've brought this up a few times because this particular work is deeply ingrained in the work that I do day to day. Additionally, I am on a Green Careers Innovation Hub with our speaker. So what I'm thinking is next year would be a perfect time, once we get our feet underneath of us, to start talking about environmental literacy and workforce development. We have environmental principles and concepts that are ingrained in many of our standards, our state standards. However, we're lacking that same luxury in CTE programs, and that's something that we want to change. So bringing those up for those two reasons, and also for the thing I'm sharing with you today. A year and a half ago, I talked to this group about the way that we speak to students, and if we're inspiring people to join our workforce, what does that look like? We have to step away from the things that don't really interest kids, or they don't have the experience or understanding to fully appreciate. They don't have mortgages, and they don't necessarily think they will ever need benefits. Good money, okay, that's one of those things, but they really want to hear, what does their potential job look like? What is exciting about the work that they do? And I'm really fortunate. I'm one of those people who really love my work. I love the work I get to do, and it's a variety of things, and I've shared a lot of those things with you in the past. And I'd like to share that this April we broke ground on a 4,000 square foot water smart pocket park, and we did that with our partner, the Wyland Foundation, and many other people that were brought to the table. And in this picture, you can see I'm standing next to Wyland, the world-renowned artist. And this means a lot to me because I'm also an artist. So I get to do this great work with great people who are advancing our initiatives to help people save water. It's also part of my day job. This particular park took a very long time. We didn't realize that there was going to be a lot of red tape, and there was going to be a lot of permitting that needed to happen. We needed to gather our partners, and we needed to get a lot of things donated. And then of course, COVID hit. So we had that challenge as well, but we finally did break ground. It's a place for visitors to come, explore, learn, and our goal is that they can come, observe, and replicate the landscaping that they see, the irrigation that they see, and they can come and learn about our natural systems and how their impact really impacts everything. So making those wise choices so that we can have a sustainable future. Also, it's a place for students to come and observe nature and learn about systems, which is all really what we're about with the environmental literacy initiative. I'd like to introduce our WEEA leadership and support. I have Bill Andrews, who founded WEEA in 2018, and he is a tremendous support and advisor to me. He is a board member of the California Environmental Education Foundation, or CEF. And then we also have Walter Zeisel, who is the manager of outreach and education for Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and he is the current president of CEF. So welcome to both of them, and thank you for all you do to support us. Here on my right, we have my team: Sarah Wilson, Public Affairs Specialist; Katie Vincent, Public Affairs and WEEA Assistant; and Alana Salas Yoshi, who is our Public Affairs Intern. These ladies are helping us facilitate this meeting. They are there to answer questions so that we aren't distracted as we're moving through the presentation. So if you have questions related to technical issues, or you have questions about are we receiving resources, any of that, please make sure to send these ladies a question in the chat and they'll answer it for you. Our regional leads, I have two of them for sure today. Bruce Noble, Regional Director, Los Angeles, California Community Colleges, and Dr. John Caffrey, Regional Director, Orange County, California Community College, and John will be joining us in about an hour. He had a scheduling conflict. We're going to do our rooms a little bit differently this time. I haven't heard from Rebecca, and I know Kurt is unavailable. So we're going to mix our regional breakout rooms. San Diego and Orange County are going to share a room, and that works with the size of our meeting this time. And as mentioned, Bill Andrews is going to help us with the Inland Empire breakout room. This is our agenda. Welcome and introductions. I'll give a leadership update. We have a good news and announcements segment that we always like to include so that people can share all the good work that we're doing that's related to the work that we do together. We have a fantastic presentation that is going to knock your socks off and get us motivated for our breakout rooms. We'll take a break at 10:50, and then we'll join our breakout rooms at 11 o'clock. If we have time, we'll do our regional share outs. Sometimes this is a lively group, so sometimes our presentation spurs a lot more questions. And if we don't have time for regional share outs, that's fine, because we also have the Padlet, which has been very helpful for us in capturing your ideas and your thoughts. And then we always leave that open for a few days so that you can go back if you've forgotten something or you have some brilliant idea that you need to add to the Padlet. At high noon, we'll be closing and inviting you to the next Leadership Roundtable meeting. Moving on to our leadership update. Very pleased to announce last year, we touched base with the Centers of Excellence for Labor Market Research, and they agreed in November to do a statewide water and wastewater workforce needs assessment survey for us, which, as we all know, we're lacking that data, and it makes it very difficult for us to encourage leadership to make the investment needed in workforce development. It always seems like somewhere down the road, we're going to have to deal with this. But the fact of the matter is the retirements are happening. Green careers are growing. We're going to need this workforce sooner than later. And the truth is, even if we have the folks that we have now, they're still going to need to get the training. And that's going to take a couple years. When we get younger workers, we're going to need to start early. We've talked about high school. We've even talked about starting as early as middle school. So the time is now for this, and we will have our foundational information with this statewide water and wastewater survey. I'm so thrilled with this. Yesterday, they began calls to the water and wastewater agencies to have them assist with this survey. We'll have results by November, and this morning I received a web-based survey link. So that link will be put in the chat. You're also going to get a copy of all the links following this meeting. You can write it down. Send this link to your human resources person. Send this link to any of your water, energy, wastewater folks who would benefit from being a participant. The more people that we have participate in the survey, the better picture that we're going to get, and the easier it's going to be for us to get funding to continue building pathways and to actually get the partnerships that we need. So send this link out to your human resources, and it is a when they get this link, it is a combo of IP address and browser stuff. I'm no IT guy, so whatever that means, it just means that it's going to be unique. They won't gather the same information from the same agency. Right now, the 4 folks that came to the table, I invited Baywork, so Michael Kushner, who's no longer with us, but he was at the last meeting, Scott Goodall with Inland Empire, IE Works, Dr. Adrian Hightower with Metropolitan, Don Jones with Cuyamaca College, and also brought in San Diego County Water Authority, and then myself. The COE wanted to keep it very contained, this focus group, so that we wouldn't get sidetracked or off, in some other place that we didn't need to be. So we worked for a few months to get these survey questions together. Is it going to be perfect? No. But is it going to be foundational? Yes. And that's anytime you can create something that is foundational, that means that we can build upon it. So let's take these survey results. I'm going to help you over the next fiscal year with some presentation slides to help you be able to present this to your leadership, present these results, and let's see what our next steps are and what other information we're going to get. But we have the foundational information coming in November. Our key 2021-22 deliverables, I'm not bringing them all up. Mostly those deliverables, yes, is our commitment to you, but also really our commitment to our sponsors, the folks that I called out at the very beginning of this meeting. We did promise that we would increase membership by 15%. I took our highest number of attendance from this fiscal year and our highest number from last fiscal year, and we're up 26%. We promised that we would do 4 teacher trainings, and that would be to introduce water into science-based lesson plans, as well as CTE programs, and we completed 4 educator trainings. Our water industry brochure that we discussed last year for school counselors is in progress. We have the foundation built, and we're going to continue listening today to make sure that we're on the right track and we're including all the information that's necessary. And then we're going to send it to our sponsors and make sure that they're comfortable with the information. And we're going to start a poll because we need to know how you want to see this brochure in your service area. So our first poll, how would you like to receive it? We can send the printed brochures directly to schools in your service area. We can send the printed brochures directly to your organization, and you can make connections with your schools, or electronic file only. Now, for our WEEA sponsors, we do have the opportunity before we print these to include your logo so that your logo is on the brochure when we send it out to either the schools in your service area or directly to you. For those who are not sponsors, the electronic file, you'll get that. You can put your logo on it. You would be responsible for printing those and getting those out to the school counselors in your service area. Looks like 68% are looking for electronic file only, 18% directly to schools, and 14% directly to organizations. So thank you for answering those questions for us. Next, we have our WEEA website. We agreed to produce an RFP to solicit somebody very skilled to create a WEEA website for us, and we promised that we'd do the wireframe. The more we started looking at it and seeing all of the different options and what we would be able to do with the money that we have, we decided to nix the RFP and take this project in-house. I want to say, to ease your mind, I lead an award-winning public affairs team. This is something that we know how to do. And as part of our commitment with the Municipal Water District of Orange County and leading WEEA, we're going to go ahead and take that project in-house. It provides it opens up a whole range of possibilities for us, including we don't have to spend money on getting it built, including one of my team gets to get some experience and some training on how to do this successfully. And we also we don't have to really, I don't know, I don't want to say argue, but we don't have to go back and forth with anybody about what we think the vision is. We're going to save a lot of time by taking this in-house. So we do have the wireframe ready. I wanted to also mention we did purchase a couple of URLs. Initially, we thought SoCalWEEA.com was going to be the one, but we do have a lot of participation statewide, and we're really considering opening that up. We do have some folks from Northern California that have joined us again, even from our last presentation. So we think we're growing. We always have been growing, but we think we're growing outside of the boundaries that were initially set for us. And we would like to be a statewide resource. If that's possible, let's do it. We're already doing the survey with Centers of Excellence, and our presenter will talk a little bit about some work that we can do again statewide. So we're thinking we're going to stick with calweea.com. We'll give you some more information about that as it comes. But we have another poll question for you. What components of a regional WEEA website would be most important or useful to you? We've thought of a bunch of things. This is multiple choice. So please let us know what would be most important or useful to you. And if we've missed something, you can select other and you can throw your idea in the chat. It's very possible we missed something. We've been spending a lot of time kind of looking at other websites that offer what we hope to offer. And we want to make sure that this is almost a one-stop shop for all of the things that you need, or when we're growing partnerships or we're connecting people to resources, that we have what you need. Career information is winning, and shareable resources, videos, brochures, flyers. Teacher resources is a big one. Workforce pathway success stories, and a speakers bureau. And this is actually really good. We're going to leave this question just up for a little bit, 92%, because if we launch a speakers bureau, we're also going to ask you if you would consider being a volunteer for your region in our speakers bureau. Is that something that we can count on you for? We can certainly do many presentations. That's not a problem. But you know your service area, you know what your people need. So if you're willing to do that, you'll be hearing from us, and we're going to ask that question of you again, if you'd be willing to be part of a speakers bureau for our collaborative. Okay, let's end the poll and share results. This is what it looks like. Career information, everything I mentioned right at the top, and that helps us out a lot. It looks like a couple people had some ideas, and that will be in the chat. Okay, wonderful. Moving on, our sponsors also get an annual report from us, which I'm working on now. That will be delivered at the end of July once it's all buttoned up. I'd like to give a shout out, and I hope they're in the room today, to a new sponsor for us for our next fiscal year. So welcome, Eastern Municipal Water District, and thank you for your support. We look forward to working with you this next year. For those who are interested in being a sponsor, it's a new fiscal year. So our sponsorship brochure has been put in the chat, and it's also here on the screen. That's always open. There's a lot of different levels, and they offer different things. So consider becoming a sponsor. All right, we're going to move into our good news and announcements segment, and this is our WEEA collaborative. So we had a couple of folks who said that they had some things to share. For those who aren't called on right away, please raise your hand, or if you've even told us that you have something to share, please raise your hand and we'll call you in the order that we've seen you. I know. Let's start with Dale.
Sure, Tiffany. Thanks.
Sure.
And appreciate it. I've got to actually jump off for a meeting at 10 o'clock with our local community college's cybersecurity staff, but wanted to update you on our work with Metropolitan Water District, Adrian Hightower. And so we'd shared on this group at a panel presentation our success with students in a cybersecurity pathway with East Valley Water District. From there, Adrian asked us if we could support a similar experience for students at Metropolitan Water District. And so what we have in place is a plan for 30 students to have work-based learning experiences, which will funnel into 10 paid internship positions in one of Metropolitan Water District's facilities. And then our goal will be to codify that work similar to as we did with East Valley Water District to board policy, where that's a experience that's woven into the system itself. And so we've been working with LA Unified School District. We've found 4 high schools in proximity that have pathways that are related to web development, networking, site, and they don't specifically have cybersecurity, but we can support that. We actually are partnered with teachcyber.org. Melissa Dark, former professor at Purdue, established an entire comprehensive K-12 curriculum to push the cybersecurity curriculum down to the K-12 level. So very excited to get these students connected and bridge to some experiences in tapping into some of these classes. Also, last night we got a call from Rialto Mayor, and they have one student who had interned with them in cybersecurity who is really sharp, but they're a student who's facing a homeless situation. So we'll be working with Cal State San Bernardino, who leads a cybersecurity program. They have a national center, as I mentioned in previous sessions, to take their successful cyber internship and translate that into early enrollment at the university. Our goal is to get them early housing, get them stabilized, and hopefully see them as a pre-apprentice in the cyber program. So those are some of the things we're working on right now, and very excited, thankful for this group, learned so much, and thankful for Adrian's leadership with Metropolitan. I know he's on vacation, or he'd say these things himself. So thank you, Tiffany, for a minute to share.
Could I just add one? Could I just add one little note there to Dale's comment about LA Unified? We've adopted Roosevelt High School, sort of in the Boyle Heights area, and we've discovered one of the reasons we adopted them is they have a cybersecurity program as part of their STEM magnet.
Very good. Yeah,
I just wanted, because you said there wasn't any, but they do have a teacher, and I've been trying to partner with them on that, but since you're already working with that, it might be.
Thank you for that. I'm aware of their strength in the GIS system world as well. And it wasn't so much that we don't have pathways in LA that have cyber, that's the proximity. So we're trying to find 4 high schools that are proximate to the location that Metropolitan will use, because that's important to students get to those experiences, not traveling so far. You don't have to worry as much about transportation. So that's what we're working on.
Oh, do you have an idea of what schools you're targeting, Dale?
So far, the schools that they gave us, if you give me a second, I can pull those up for you.
Okay.
It would be, we're taking a look at the community colleges as well. And so LA Trade Tech, LA Harbor, LA City College. We're also looking at the schools would be Carson High School, Fremont, King, and Medical Magnet and Narbonne. Those are the ones so far. But we, again, after we do some initial checking, may go back to the drawing board, because what we want is ready, willing, and able staff to take and lead this effort. And where we find those, that's where we can get those early wins for students, because Adrian is very open to having the students connect once we get that pathway spun up.
Okay, thank you.
Dale, please keep us updated on your good news. That's really awesome. And hope Adrian's having a great vacation, but happy that you were able to share that with us. And kind of the same thing that we'll be talking about today, and we continue to talk about how can we replicate this work if it's successful, right? And I think that you have shown that we're already replicating. You're moving on to Los Angeles and work with Metropolitan, and hopefully we'll be able to expand that work into our other regions, San Diego, Inland Empire, which I know that you've already done some work there in Inland Empire, and Orange County. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks so
and
much.
Thanks, Walter.
Thank you.
Amanda.
Good morning, Amanda Fine, Eastern Municipal Water District. I wanted to share that last week we partnered with West Valley High School in Hemet Unified School District to have their first kind of kickoff for a water technology CTE class. So we had about 15 students who are interested in participating in the fall when the class begins, and they kind of got intro course to water in Southern California and California in general. And we're also able to spend several days with us, as well as some of our sister agencies in the San Diego area, and take some tours, learn about groundwater desalination, water filtration, wastewater. And we're really excited to partner with West Valley on this program. They are the first school in our service area that is embarking on a water technology CTE.
Awesome. Awesome news. Congratulations. Nick.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tiffany, very much. Can everyone hear okay? Am I coming across? Okay. Nicholas Dibbs, a teacher, educator, former State Water Project water education tour coordinator. I want to, as a teacher, piggyback on what Amanda has said and Dale and the others, and the goal here of WEEA, which and this meeting, which is to build and strengthen workforce pathways for Southern California high school students. We have to recognize where the roadblocks are, but let me just say it's in the chat. I put it in there, and dual enrollment, where high school students can be dually enrolled in a either at the community college water training courses or at CSU Sacramento's Office of Water Programs. That's the Ken Carey courses. So dual enrollment is very important to getting our high school students that are motivated or want to get into the water field to have a way to train at the same time they're in high school through the dual enrollment. So where they would earn both college credits, college units and high school credits at the same time for those that are motivated to go that way. So I put that in the chat. Check out CSU Sacramento's Office of Water Programs, the Ken Carey courses, and then our wonderful community colleges that have, such as San Diego Canyon College, water utility science programs, and so on, and the other community colleges. So that's number one. Number two is we have to recognize where the roadblocks are, and that is that there's a shortage, not only an upcoming shortage of industry personnel that will be retiring, but a shortage of CTE teachers. And it's hard to recruit CTE teachers because not too many people have the credential. I've gone through this as a science teacher, finding out what's required. I have more than 1 year, I've got over 8 years of experience in the water industry, but it has to be within the last 5 years, and my experience is over 5 years ago. So after a lot of digging and poking around and asking a lot of questions, finally got the answer that the Commission on Teacher Credentialing now allows local school districts, that is local education agencies, also known as LEAs, but local school districts, to apply for a variable term waiver credential. So if a retired water industry professional or someone who doesn't have the experience within the last 5 years wants to teach CTE, and they meet all the requirements except for not having it within the last 5 years, that experience, they can get the hiring school district can apply for a variable term waiver credential to allow our professionals to go in and teach these CTE classes at the high school level. So I've put this in the chat. My phone number and email is there. If you have any questions, call me. And I do have my T2D2. And so I'm looking for a position where I can be teaching CTE in LA Unified or somewhere else. So I hope if there's any educators in the meeting that we can talk later, and I'd love to teach a CTE in the water field starting in the fall. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Nick. And thanks for putting that information in the chat. Just a reminder, not just the meeting recording, but also the presentations and the chat is shared with everybody after the meeting once we do our wrap up. So those resources that Nick put in the chat, we'll all be able to access them. So thank you for that. Lisa.
Hello. So I wanted to share a project we've been working on with Santiago College. Tomorrow we are having our first Water Academy here at IRWD. We will be hosting 5 different high schools in the Orange County area. And they will be taking on 2 tours, one of our marsh and one of our operations plant with our new biosolids facilities. We will also be serving lunch, and during lunch, we are going to be having 6 staff members doing a Q&A, talking to high school students about how they got into the water industry, how it's benefited them, and hopefully answering questions. And hopefully we'll get the students engaged, just like you said earlier, explaining to them what the benefits are coming out of school with, zero school debt, helping the environment, explaining to them why it's great and why the water industry can offer great benefits. So it's our first time, so we're very excited for this. It's a half-day event here. Our HR department, our public affairs department, and our operations department will all be participating.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Lisa, and good luck with your event. I'm sure it's going to be really successful. What I love about all of these good news announcements, we're getting back to, I don't want to dare I say normal, but tours are coming back. And tours are one of our most powerful tools to engage students, to engage teachers. The Metropolitan Inspection Trip program is coming back. That means a great deal for those of us who are Met member agencies and what we're able to offer our member agencies, an opportunity to bring decision makers on a bus to tour our water supply system and take an actual look, be in the room and see what it's all about, see why it's so important, see what we've been working for and what we've been striving to accomplish over the years. So tour season, yay, I'm glad it's back. And Lisa, I know this is going to be a great event. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else who'd like to share? Crystal Nettles, are you in the room?
I am sorry. I'm the phone number. I've been driving, so apologies that I couldn't put my name or answer the polls. I just wanted to mention that OCWD has 2 internships currently available that we haven't had in the past. We've traditionally had more of the administrative internships available, so we're really excited to have some technical internships. One is in our operations department for the GWRS, and the other is a mechanics internship. So off the top of my head, I don't know what the deadline is for either of those, but we're excited to kind of finally have those offerings for the folks currently studying water distribution or anything related to auto shop, or I'm not sure of the technical term for that.
Thanks for sharing that.
Under the career section.
Great. And when you have a chance, if you can shoot me a link to those jobs, and we'll include them in our wrap up since you're driving, just when you have a chance.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, like 15 minutes I should be at my computer.
Great, sounds good. I know that MODOC also has recently opened a water use efficiency intern position, so we'll include that in the chat. And coming hopefully next week, we have an opening also in another water use efficiency position. So keep your eye out for those. And if you know of students who are in Orange County, we just have a couple of jobs that have opened. So happy to share that information with you. Robert.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Robert Scott. I'm the president of Baywork and also the technical training program administrator at Valley Water. And I just wanted to share with everyone that Baywork, along with JVS and Valley Water, next month will be bringing on 2 interns, which will be on a long-term internship. This internship could last up to 2 years. And by doing so, that will give them minimum experience to apply for our entry-level instrument tech and controls position. And this is the first time we've done something like this. And this was an effort of Baywork and JVS, and we are looking to even advance this into an apprenticeship at some point, but this was a way for us to bridge the gap. And so we're going to be starting that. We're going to have 2 interns starting next month for this long-term internship, and we're excited about it. So I wanted to share that with everyone as a solution that we came up with to solve some of our needs here.
I love that. Thank you for coming, Robert. I'm so glad to see you, and I'm so glad to see that Northern California finds these meetings valuable. So I'm hoping we actually have a lot of people who have registered who are from all over California. So not just our 4 regions. And we're talking about perhaps expanding our reach. And maybe that's something that maybe your folks through Baywork would want to join our little alliance and see what we can do and really shake things up across the state.
Sounds good. We can talk more about that. Yeah.
Thanks, Robert. Scott.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. So I'm happy to tell you guys about 2 things that IEWorks recently accomplished. Number one, we just graduated 15 pre-apprentices from our inaugural pre-apprenticeship program and partnered with San Bernardino College and Inland Empire Black Workers Center. It was a 12-week program, and the students took 2 courses at the college at the same time, combining soft skills, OSHA 10, emotional intelligence, a number of courses that really kind of help the students prepare for job readiness to move into a trade internship or apprenticeship program. And so we're really excited about that. They finished up and we had a big graduation at the college last Monday. And we're still working with our employer partners to finalize our apprenticeship program. We are kind of at a point right now where we're have all our work competencies fleshed out, and hopefully we'll be launching something in the fall that these students could take advantage of. And the second thing is we partnered with Hemet Unified School District and with Eastern Municipal District to try to see how we might be able to integrate some mentoring into the program that they're developing. So in the second week of the program, we recruited four folks that went through our internship program, young folks from the community that got hired at water districts. And they served as mentors for the second week of the program. So they met with the students, helped them work on their project, and really just kind of talk from a first person perspective about how they got started in water, what it's like, all the opportunities. And it was a great experience. We look forward to doing it again next year.
Congratulations. That truly is good news. And you're doing some incredible things in Inland Empire. I love the idea too, that you're bringing mentors to your programs. I really think that's important. I think there's something to be said for the personal connection to somebody whose job you're interested in. What does my job look like? And I encourage everyone to find those advocates, those people who are passionate about their job and who want to pay it forward, and they're in there, they're in your organization. At the top of the hour, I talked about the good things that I do about my job, and I love my job. I'm one of those advocates. I would imagine that many of you in the room here are those advocates. Find those advocates to help us find the best people for our jobs that are opening. Nobody can do it like the people who are excited about their jobs and have enough to share other than our standard good benefits, good jobs, pay your mortgage, that sort of thing. Invite them in and let them shine and do half of this job for you. Great news, Scott. Anyone else have anything to share for our good news and announcements? Did I miss anything in the chat? I don't think so. Perfect. The presentation you've all been waiting for. Please help me welcome Jeff Schmidt. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Ignited. He has been making waves for a long time in a lot of great spaces. He leads a national network of partners, industry, educators, government to bring career pathway opportunities to underserved schools in the US. And he's going to lead us in a discussion about what a water and wastewater workforce development strategy might look like. I'm very happy to let Jeff continue to introduce himself and the great work that they're doing over Ignited. Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Tiffany. And I'm looking at this, wishing I looked this young. And you know, this, I won't tell you when this picture was taken, but it feels like an eternity ago. Well, hey, I'm gonna jump in. Just a couple of really quick shout outs. Incredibly excited to see Robert on the call, because we have some great partnerships with Bayworks and obviously JVS together. Mira Burton from Valley Water is also on the call, and we've been working with her in a lot of her innovative pathways work for a long time. And then Amy Frame with 10 Strands. I always want to call you Amy Strands, but Amy is a great partner with Cali, which is something Tiffany and I are involved with at a statewide level. Call me Framey. At a statewide level to drive environmental literacy and talk about green jobs. And I'll touch on a little bit of that work, but obviously want to open that up for discussion, because I think there's a broader sustainability and green jobs opportunity here for the water industry. And then someone who was not able to attend, but I think some of the folks know my Chief Education Officer, Emily Dilger. She's actually does a ton of work with the water industry over the last 6 years. She is really the spiritual guru of a lot of this, but she's off building some of this work with our emerging partnership with Structural Engineering Association. So you're stuck with me today, unfortunately, but I will do my best to represent, and just excited to see a lot of the people that we work with on the call. So Tiffany, I will do my best to sort of, I'm hoping people are feeling free to jump in. You know, don't let me kind of rattle on. If you have questions, you want me to dive into any specifics, and I'll do my best to kind of keep us on the 40-minute, the track that we have allocated. But one of the things when Tiffany and I were talking about this, I was really interested in this, I guess, this fight. And I think we love to call this the war for talent, but that makes it seem like, you know, it's this long thing that's going to last forever. And, you know, it's been a phrase that's around for a while, but I would say this is a fight that's happening now. And so I tend to think of this as a much more immediate, you know, you're faced with somebody who's got their knuckles up, and a lot of industries are in the same situation. So I want to talk a little bit about how we sort of see that fight, but also, you know, I think I'm confident that Ignited and some of our partnerships can help with that. And, you know, I want to definitely explore some of the areas that we're working on, but make sure it's really relevant for the water and wastewater industry. So part of this is just going to be letting you know what we do, but then hopefully opening up for discussions on where we can help. A little bit about Ignited. So I'm relatively new CEO. It's my 3rd year. Ignited's been around for about 36 years. The power of all this, though, is we started as a professional development for teachers organization. And the way it works is teachers come in, they spend 8 weeks during the summer in actual working environment, which is perfect for the water and wastewater industry, as the team was saying, with tours and all kinds of other things. But they spend time and then they learn about the industry firsthand, and they bring it back to their kids. And then we do that through cultivated lessons and coaches and some of the other details that I'll show you later. But the reason teachers are really important, people sometimes forget this. We've all been out of school for a while. Teachers on average reach about 150 kids a year. You know, they're the ultimate scaling mechanism in the environmental environment, in the educational environment. And, you know, over a 4-year period, that's about 600 students. Over an average career, it's about 4,000 students. So if you want to reach kids, you can try to go through the slog of reaching the millions and millions of kids, but we always kind of argue there's probably never going to be enough time, money, and energy to reach them all. But one great way to reach them is with teachers. And that gives you a sense of why the numbers on the right-hand side of the slide are the way they are. We've been regularly partnering with companies and universities and labs to bring careers to kids through teachers. So we'll happy to touch on some of that a little bit later, but that's sort of what Ignited does at the core. We've been evolving a lot, and I'll talk a little bit about that evolution as well. But like I mentioned earlier, I'm definitely not going to read all this, but you have the slides. We love the water industry. We've been working with the industry for about 6 years. Emily does most of the heavy lifting. She gets super excited whenever we get a chance to work with Valley Water or Bay Work, or, you know, I've listed some of the ones that we've worked with, but there were too many to list in particularly Northern California. So that's why I was really excited to connect with the Southern California group, because I think there's a ton of opportunity to fight a good fight on behalf of the industry. Some of the things that the teachers have learned are, you know, really directly about careers. They've done tours, they've done job shadows. They've really observed, this is the thing that I think is really important. They've observed how a lot of their core things that they teach, like algebra or, you know, any of the sciences, how do those get used in real jobs? And it's that relevance that sometimes kids are missing. You know, I don't know about everybody on the call, but, you know, I struggled to study algebra sometimes because I thought, how am I ever going to use this algebra stuff? Well, you know, in the water and wastewater industry, you definitely are using those kind of skills. So it's that connection to relevance that's super important. And really about this idea that teachers then they have a positive experience and they bring these experiences back to their kids. I've got you know, 3 high schoolers, and I can tell you, you know, they're not as interested in listening to us as parents, but when their teachers say something and influence them, the teachers still have a lot of influence. So that's something to just keep in mind as you're going through this journey, is teachers play an outsized role in a lot of this work. And we, you know, we've learned that through 30 plus years of working with them. This is the fight slide. You know, as I thought about this presentation, I feel like a lot of the industries that we talk to and with and collaborate with, some of them, I came from aerospace as part of the job I had before this with Lockheed Martin. You know, I think aerospace looks at the fight that they're in as kind of on the left here. You know, it's this guy's the bare knuckle boxer, the first heavyweight champion. He was a real powerhouse in his time. I think he would lose in about 30 seconds to Ronda Rousey. You know, like, I think that just things have evolved, things have changed, you know, and some industries still, you know, still are in this, we're in a bare knuckle fight. I think it's reframing every industry, not just water, wastewater, but every industry needs to reframe that there's a different kind of competition going on. And I'm even talking about the tech players and the people we all look at as having loads and loads of money. I don't think they've fully acknowledged that the fight is really evolved and changed. And it's something important to acknowledge, because I wanted to give you a sense of another industry that we work with. This is kind of how the fight is shaping up. So we work a lot with the semiconductor industry. The previous CEO of Ignited is now part of that industry. We're very fortunate to work closely with them. They are working to reshore, with Congress, with the president, to reshore the industry. For those not familiar, there's something called the Americas Competes Act. That is a $52 billion piece of legislation that's working its way through the legislative process. It's currently in reconciliation, so both parties are really arguing over the details. But I've heard from Speaker Pelosi's announcements and things that there's a potential that this actually hits the president's desk at some point this summer. I don't believe it's going to be before July 4th, but who knows? That's building capacity and workforce in many different areas. And what they've learned is this will add about 40,000 more jobs as they reshore this industry. So I know that with the infrastructure bill that passed, the water and wastewater industry is a little bit in the same situation where there's a lot of attention, there's a lot of sort of legislative activity, there's a lot of funding that's coming. The thing to keep in mind, I think that people sometimes lose sight of because they're working in their industry is, so this is 40,000 jobs in semiconductor. We work in biotech a lot, 1.1 million jobs estimated there. Data science, 250,000 jobs. I saw an EPA report that said, with the silver tsunami, a third of the water and wastewater workforce will retire in the next 10 years, and different estimates of potentially 55,000 jobs. So if you look at what the pandemic has done, plus this incredible ramping up of these new jobs and people working legislatively and strategically and earmarking funds and doing all these things, I'll go back to this slide. It's not the fight on the left. It's a very big strategic fight with new rules and new ways to engage that are happening today. So I think that that's something that it's really important to just keep our minds around as we think about how to address some of the talent shortages and driving awareness for the industry itself. The other thing, I just wanted to acknowledge is a few things that you already know. The silver tsunami is real. It's here today. It's not a projected, this is going to happen over the next 30 years. It's happening now. And I can tell you, given what we do, it's happening in aerospace, it's happening in manufacturing, semiconductor. I'm sure it's happening in other industries as well, as the dynamics of the workforce really change. The fight for talent is fierce and it's intensifying. This is why I kind of call it a fight as opposed to a war. This is now. This is your knuckles are up, and we've got to figure out these things. Partially also because of the loss of critical skills and knowledge and culture. One thing I can tell you is, Lockheed is worried about this because they have government contracts to send missions to the moon and to Mars and other things. If they can't find the talent to staff these programs and these missions, the government is not going to fund that. They have other options with SpaceX and some of the commercial players. So their fight for talent is now, it impacts their business in a totally material way. And they're still fighting a little bit of the old fight and struggling with a lot of the same things that the water and wastewater industry are struggling with themselves. So I wanted to just say, I don't think your industry is in it alone. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. But I also think that it means that the competition is a little more fierce than just the Facebooks and the people that can pay ridiculous amounts of money. Because I've had exactly the same kind of conversations that I've seen your industry having when I was at Lockheed. You could almost replicate and replace one industry name with another industry name, and the challenges are very much the same. So much so that what ends up happening is there's industry cannibalism, which is where you just try to poach people already in the industry. And then you quickly realize it creates bidding wars. Some industries can't afford that. Some industry, you don't want to get into a bidding war with Google or Meta or any of those folks because it's a zero-sum game. So then the recruiting with urgency starts. And I spend a lot of time with talent acquisition teams. And so the way this sort of progresses in an industry is kind of predictable because we've seen it. But then the big questions remain as you go through this hiring push. How do you reach the new talent? What are the right relationships to form? Is it schools in my proximity? Is it community colleges? Is it, how do we get students interested? A lot of the things I hear the team on the call struggling with, you're not alone, but you're also struggling with exactly the same questions, and people are arriving at the same conclusions. So one of the things that we've started to think about with the water industry is, okay, one way to kind of win the fight is if you are one piece of one larger entity, that's really tough to compete against aerospace as an entire entity, or to compete with technology as an entire entity. It's really tough as the water and wastewater industry to fight a fight when you've got Google teaming up with Meta, teaming up with, you know, whomever and whomever. It, like, technology as an entity is a tough competitor, as is aerospace. You know, as is financial services, as is manufacturing as a whole. So one thought I hope we can explore is there's a potential partnership with sustainability and green jobs and clean tech. And this is a lot of what Tiffany and I have been talking about with Amy in the background. I think the opportunity that creates a stronger competitive situation is, let's lean into the fact that you are part of the ultimate set of green jobs that are out there and clean technologies and a lot of that stuff. I will also tell you from personal experience that that I'm getting a lot more involved. I was nominated as an environmental quality commissioner in our city here in Menlo Park. So I am spending a lot of personal time kind of talking about trees, talking about sustainability, talking about, you know, vehicle electrification. These things are pretty exciting, you know, self-driving cars and how they can be electric and not gas-based. These things are pretty exciting. Students get excited. There's a lot of momentum and energy in this. So I think it's just one thing to kind of keep in mind as we talk about this a little bit more. So I wanted to shift gears just for a minute. The thing that has started to happen that I hope is interesting to everybody is, so Ignited, as a new CEO, you often come into these roles and you think, okay, what do we need to do for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Do we stay with what we're doing, or do we need to shift to some of the things that are happening in the market? So with Ignited, what we realized was, I'll be totally transparent. We were one small program in a sea of STEM programs. So similar to the point I was making about the water industry being one industry in this wider ocean of industries, Ignited, you know, 30 something years is a pretty good run to have one program that runs the same way. But the challenge we had was, there are so many other STEM programs now and so many other opportunities. Companies are creating their own programs, and we're sometimes competing with you know, companies that are funding their own programs. I think a lot of you are funding your own programs. So our environment has changed. And I came in as a little bit of an outsider with the business background to say, hey, we better wake up, because we are a great program. People love us, but we are competing against companies that pay our bills, but would they rather pay for their own program, or would they rather pay for Ignited? And a lot of small nonprofits are struggling with the same thing, frankly. Companies will do it themselves, industries will do it themselves. So when we stepped back from that a couple of years ago and we looked at where we wanted to head, we have a lot of strong relationships in biotech. That's probably, we have a large curriculum project. We were looking at different partnerships. We have a lot of strong partnerships in the water industry. And we decided collectively was the way to go. So we pulled together a small group of founding partners. You see them down at the bottom left down there. That network has continued to grow pretty regularly, but we looked to something called a step-up network. And that basically was designed around helping us collectively grow Ignited's footprint so we can still deliver teacher experiences, but we're kind of forming this idea that closing this innovation to education gap where kids learn about these amazing careers is really the problem. Biotech faces it, aerospace, water, every industry faces a huge, huge awareness gap. Not only of the careers themselves, but when cool new things happen in the industry, that's what we call the innovation to education gap. Kids may never hear about it. You know, this amazing thing, and particularly high school kids may never hear about it. Underserved communities, the same thing. So what we're really looking to bridge is these amazing career groups and opportunities for kids. How can we make sure that high schools, community college, vocational schools, military veteran programs really understand what these programs what these careers are all about? And it links to things like career pathways and other work, but the goal is making sure they at least have a baseline understanding of the careers. And somebody said it earlier, you know, kids are not thinking about that they have bills to pay and they need careers and they need benefits and all that. I can tell you, they're not necessarily even thinking about careers unless they happen to be involved in, you know, some of the CTE work. So what we're trying to do is break the mold of CTE and say they should just know about these careers anyway. So the network around Step Up is designed to do that, essentially. This is just a sense of some of the partners. There actually are, I don't know, there are probably 6 or 7 more that are pending. We've got artificial intelligence partners. We're partnering with Stanford University on some data science work. There's other, I haven't figured out how to represent the network yet, but this is a preliminary slide to show you who our kind of first batch of partners have been. We're really fortunate. We've got some good water partnerships with districts themselves, but also we have work going on with NOAA and the EPA on some water, essentially some water projects that we can also talk about in a little more detail if you want. This is, so we, when we stepped back, we said, these are some of the careers that we want to make sure kids are aware of. So these are, we're trying to focus on 10, and this is the point about, these are mostly invisible. If a student ever hears about cybersecurity or data science in high school, that's amazing. That's pretty rare. Same with biotech, same with artificial intelligence or autonomous vehicles. The challenge is, these are the jobs that are here today. You know, a lot of these jobs, and green tech and sustainability is the same thing. These jobs are here, but they're not being talked about consistently in high schools, community colleges, vocational schools, and things like that. So we have a lot of work to do just to close that original awareness gap. And what we're trying to focus on is get companies to think about, one of my board members really put it pretty well. You know, companies focus on hiring professionals and new grads, and I think the water industry is the same. You're thinking about those two segments. You want to retrain your professionals, you want to make sure they stay engaged, you want to bring in new grads. There's also this thing that we're starting to call pre-grad, which just means before people graduate, that's when you lay the foundation. Pre-grad is really important. So we're hoping to get some traction around this idea of employers should think about 3 segments as they invest, basically. One is invest in your professionals, totally. Make sure they're well trained, make sure they have promotion opportunities, great work experience. Make sure you're investing in new grads because they're your future. But if you really want to be smart and you really want to win the fight that everybody's in, think really in a smart way about pre-grads, because that's the new battleground, really, I think. I won't bore you with a lot of details here. This is, I think this has been a useful slide to explain to people that we're operating in a pretty complex environment. The pre-grad focus, this is not something that Ignited created. This is our set of pipelines and talent pools. Now, we can always argue about the details, but I would say pre-grad, there's core skills being built in middle school and high school. And then kids can go direct to the workforce, which is fantastic. They can go to CTE vocational ed, and they can go some of those routes. They can go the traditional college route, or they can go in military and defense. These are pipelines that exist. Ignite is not creating, and we're just trying to acknowledge that we talk about these things a lot, but it's pretty rare to see a schematic, really. And then there's lots of talent pools that exist that are out there that you need to influence. So explaining that, I use this a lot to explain to companies and employers, this is the environment in which we're operating from an education point of view, and also a workforce development point of view. And we get a lot of people kind of nodding their heads and going, yeah, like I can see why it's important to start earlier, because there's a lot of work to do to make sure these skills are built in the right way. One thing that we do with this program is we focus on career groups. And what that really means is those 10 areas that we're showing you, including green tech and sustainability, how do we bring people together as a community between professionals that are in the workforce and teachers to make sure that they're regularly collaborating? And what we've got is we've been building out a career toolkit, so we can talk more about that. I'll show you a little bit more details. And the career groups work on projects. They work on pathway projects. They work on teacher engagement projects. What we're trying to do is treat those as fairly open groups. And this is still emerging. We're still forming the groups. This initiative has been around for a little over a year, just so everybody knows. We've been moving at kind of light speed with it. But there are things like we need to keep forming the groups and keep getting people engaged. But hopefully what they're doing is laying the foundation with content about the industry, teacher training, and student and teacher experiences, connecting internships, tours, that kind of stuff. And then there's a lot of other group projects that we are working to support people with as they participate in these groups. I won't go into a ton of detail here, but there's more information. This is a good example of, like, with the career toolkit, these are the kinds of things that we're building out for the different industries. So a good example is we have a pretty decent sized grant with the Department of the Navy to work on cybersecurity. And so with cybersecurity, what we're building out is a lot of the content for that for middle school and high school students with some of the things that you see in the blue box. We're building out teacher training experiences with the Navy to talk about cyber. And then we're trying to figure out, both in Southern and Northern California, what are the different cybersecurity experiences that students and teachers can go through to kind of reinforce what they learned through content and teacher training and things like that. And then we're spending a lot of time figuring out, how do we engage the right group of populations that are more disadvantaged when it comes to the visibility of this stuff. So we're building equity heat maps to show where the need is really the greatest. We're starting to form partnerships with HCBUs and HBCUs and other minority serving higher education institutions, and looking at different projects there. And then also a diversity engagement playbook, which is really about how do we work with chief diversity officers and employee resource groups in companies so that they can be engaged, because that's a huge sort of student self-identification part of the whole equation. So this is just a little bit of detail. I can talk about any of these pieces that you're interested in, but we do have this mapped out, and we're working on various projects at different stages in this continuum here. And then we also have partnerships. This was not done on purpose. Robert and I didn't plan this ahead of time, but we have worked on curriculum projects for and with Baywork, with Valley Water, with semiconductor industry, cybersecurity. We love to start with the foundation of this. One thing I'd say for the water and wastewater industry is, consolidation might be the key coming up next, because I think there's a lot of amazing content out there. But what we try to do is we either develop it ourselves, we have the capabilities to do that, or we find like-minded organizations who are building that, and then we partner it with that sort of ecosystem that I shared with you earlier, making sure that there's really good teacher training and student-teacher experiences that reinforce it. And then we have the last piece about this, and then I'll shift gears a little bit again, is we have a partnership with Tallow, which essentially is allowing this longitudinal tracking of data so that we can see what students are involved with. And what students do is they self-report activities that they're involved with. We're working on this thing called curated pathways, where we can create digital badges. So we take like Baywork, they might do a Baywork bit of curriculum, and the teacher verifies that they've taught that curriculum, and the students get a digital badge. Then maybe they do one of the internships, and then maybe they do some other activity. And then if you get a student who does 4 or 5 things, that's a pretty good candidate for potentially joining the industry. And Tallow allows us to kind of see that continuum and curated pathway. And then what they do is they connect employers with those high potential students who are expressing an interest through this work. And for those who work with education a lot, you know that the longitudinal tracking of student information is one of the biggest challenges. This sort of is a way, because the students are self-reporting and they sign agreements, this sort of gets around the need to try to, iron out some of the details of getting data out of schools and districts. It's a closed garden as well, so that protects, some of the student anonymity from some of the other entities that are out there. But Tallow is a really great partnership, and we're figuring out how to build that capability out in a pretty big way. The last couple pieces that I wanted to mention, and we'll save this for the last 5 or 6 minutes, is I thought about ways we could talk about becoming a tougher competitor together for the industry. And given that, and Emily and I spent some time together talking through this, and we looked at our work with Valley Water and Baywork and a lot of the other entities and said, okay, so if we're going to help the industry, if we're going to figure out a way that works for us as a partner, what are some of the things that we can do? So there are 3 or 4 proven approaches, and Tiffany mentioned this as well. Let's figure out some proven approaches and work statewide. I think things are moving statewide. Collective impact is going to be the way that you're going to cut through the noise with kids, because I guarantee you a lot of other industries where I had the exact same conversation with biotech 2 weeks ago at Ohlone College, and they're talking about the same thing. Collectively, how do we drive biotech awareness, semiconductor, aerospace? So you're in this fight of awareness, really. I understand there's a lot of other things that follow behind that, but if you don't have the awareness, all the other parts of the fight aren't good. You're not going to make it to round 3 if you're not winning in round 1, I think is or if you get knocked out in round 1. So I'm not sure. I'm not a big boxing fan, so I'm not sure if the analogy is working. But you gotta fight in the round that you're in is maybe a good way to say that. So we can work across multiple talent pipelines. That's what we're already doing with the Step Up program. K-12, vocational, out of school, and workforce partners, MilVet, community college, four-year colleges. Let's weave all this stuff together to make sure that we're building awareness, starting simple. And I don't know if this makes sense, but some of my training, we used to talk about taking over the airwaves. Like, let's make sure that people really understand this is an industry that's out there, and it's a very incredible part of green tech and sustainability, which is getting a lot of attention and funding moving forward. I think the second step is, let's look at a collective industry-wide strategy. Can we combine a lot of the things that you just shared in the good news section? How do we document that? How do we put it in a repository? How do we work with district after district and replicate it? And we're doing a ton of that work through the group projects. So I think that's part of the goal that we want to really drive, and look at solving for the district, but also collectively, can we start to look locally, regionally, statewide, and then down the road, can we capture some practices nationally?
Jeff, do you have a moment for a question?
Yeah, I saw John. Yeah.
Perfect. John, go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. Hey, I like this idea here. Under the awareness building piece, how do we reach parents? Because that's our biggest problem, really. I mean, we can get the counselors to talk about programs with the students, but if they don't have the backing of the parents, we really don't see them making decisions that that favor the program. So how do you approach that? You're muted, Jeff.
Oh, sorry, let me unmute. Yeah, just to give you a sense, John, there's probably 2 ways to answer that initially, and I would say I don't have all the answers, but I think we've seen this as well for other industries. One is because we're working in a group project structure, we turn that over to people in the industry and people and teachers to build those kind of community by communities, because every district is different. We realized pretty early on that a one-size-fits-all approach is a real challenge. So one of the things that we do is we work with these groups to write grants to acknowledge what environment they're faced in, and then we build that awareness with partners. Very kind of, I don't want to call it hyper local, but I'd say, we work to get money toward building that awareness. Because partially what you're faced with is, I forget what the new ratio is, but the number of career counselors to students is something like 1 counselor to 482 students. Schools have de-invested for various reasons. So trying to count on career counselors to make your industry stand out from other industries I just don't think that's a battle worth fighting. So we've been funding local projects to build that. And then also making sure that as we collaborate with folks, that parents are always part of that discussion. Parents are always part of campaigns and work and things like that. And so we just wrote a big grant for the Department of Defense that we're hoping that we might get once they announce. And also some of these K-16 collaborative projects, and we make sure parents are just part of that funding stream. So we've relied less on counselors and more on just making sure parents are top of mind.
Thanks, Jeff. I think it would be great if we started doing things like parent-student days where they can come visit a wastewater treatment plant or a reservoir or something where together they learn about the industry and begin to start considering that as a viable career pathway.
And totally agree. And what we're hoping to start working on with all of you is like, let's document those, because somebody's doing it. Somebody's doing it either in the water industry or another industry. And we just reskin that thing. We don't need to like create it from scratch. I guarantee you there are really great programs out there, and we just document it. And then whatever districts or entities want to pick it up, you have a template, you have a roadmap.
Jeff, Robert.
Yeah. And Nick.
Perfect.
Did you call on me, Tiffany?
I did.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to underscore John's question. I think it was a great question because it aligns with a thought I had while listening to Jeff's presentation. Great presentation, by the way, Jeff. But the thought I had is concerning John's question, how to reach the parents. And also, while you were talking, I was thinking this really reminds me of colleges and universities competing for athletic talent. And this is, and I think we can learn something from them in how to answer John's questions and how we reach the parents, but also how we sell our school and say that the college coach is selling their school, that they're selling that this, first of all, you need to be aware of us, that we're here, and that your experience with us will be beneficial for you. And I think that is a key element that we need to sell ourselves to show just how well these jobs in our industries can benefit the students. And when we have our success stories, make sure those stories are told in great detail, so that the students can see how the pathway of this person that came into the industry aligns with where they are at the state that they're in their educational pursuits. So that's a thought I had. It just came to my mind, still baking in the oven, but I wanted to share that to underscore John's question.
Hey, Robert, that's actually a pretty excellent idea. And when you think about it in that context, when you're talking about a football program, for example, it's always the coach, right, that's reaching out to the parent about their student because they know that they've got some skills, right, that they're looking for. So in the same line, maybe we get some industry coaches that are focused on students in the water pathways that then contact the parents and say, hey, let me tell you more about our company and what we do and the career pathway that your student could be involved in. That could actually potentially have some good outcomes.
Agreed, John.
And Robert, you both remind me of two dynamics I think it's important to be aware of as we go on this journey a little bit further. One is, K-12, somebody had mentioned about the teaching and the CTE teachers and all that. So I'm married to a teacher, which means all your friends are teachers, by the way. In case you're ever considering marrying a teacher, then your entire social network becomes teaching, which is great. But then you hear all the terrifying stories about what it's like to be a K-12 teacher these days. The thing that's a struggle is not only the CTE programs. I think maybe Nick was mentioning that, or somebody is. It's a lot of teaching is incredibly tough. The thing is, the government is sending a lot of money down to kind of work on this, but it's not just money. So the schools are looking for, K-12 is looking for any kinds of supports that they can get to get the money funneled to them, people who understand the environment, who can partner and really help them kind of get through the real difficulty in educating our kids. So having this attention at a local level with the schools, I think, is really important, but also knowing kind of what they're going through. And parents, sometimes are a little disconnected from that reality as well. But I think that's a key thing. And then, Robert really reminded me, we also have really strong partnerships with community colleges. Foothill Community Colleges is one we love. We're building apprenticeships with them. We're building a metaverse project with them, or we're starting to build a metaverse project with them. What the president of Foothill told me the other day was, hey, we're a business. We're trying to get students to come to our program, kind of like the college coach or the coach trying to come in. community colleges are ready for partners to just help them get more students in their systems. They have been for a long time, but I think now more than ever that funding is freed up for community colleges. That's a prime example of areas where I would say we're starting to form partnerships with BACCC. You know, I know you're forming partnerships with the CCC, but I would double down on community colleges as well. I think Nick, oh, go ahead. Sorry, John.
I might take that one step further for industry as a, I mean, you know, there's apprenticeship programs and all that kind of stuff out there, and they're difficult to get started, although we can get them started. But aside from that, this idea that Robert had a minute ago, if you actually had a water district that said, hey, we're going to go after these students, we're going to contact their parents and say, you know what, your students in this pathway, we feel like it would be a good candidate for our company, and then pick up the educational costs, which are very low in the community college, and pay for it, and say, look, we're gonna pay for their pathway. We're gonna pay the college tuition, put them through a 2-year or 3-year or whatever program, like say Santiago Canyon, for example. You know, that might cost $5,000, but they're giving themselves an opportunity to have a student trained specifically for their district. So that might be something that you think about, because that then operates almost like an apprenticeship. You're covering their tuition costs, but you could also do some little, you know, work experience, roll some work experience in there for those students.
Yeah, that sounds great. And just I want to make sure we get to Nick and Bill, but I'd say the thing that I recommend we do is, and we'll come to this as a recommendation, is like, let's just start getting this into a basic strategy. Let's start putting these ideas down on paper, and, you know, let's upvote and downvote the first round of ideas. And then, you know, it's sort of just building this more collective strategy that I think will help us figure out, like, this is where most people want to focus their attention. But to your point, John, there's
yeah, you know, parents are always interested in scholarships. So that's just to add on to Robert's point.
John, by the way, this is Lisa at IRWD, and I love that idea. Since we're having that water academy tomorrow, and I've got everybody interested right now over here, I am going to float that idea. Just like you said, it's a scholarship. And I love that idea too of a parent student day. So we'll definitely be talking to Santiago about that for the next one. I think that's a great idea, because the biggest thing I think that parents miss, you know, sometimes parents want to push the 4-year, you know, education, and not every kid is ready for that or needs that. And they don't know those opportunities. You know, these are some great jobs with some great incomes. And
yeah, and the way
making over $100,000 a year with 0 student debt. So
right, and the way you bridge that is you say, look, this is the first 2 years of their university degree, okay, and they go to work, and then they can continue on with a bachelor's degree and not have any debt because they're making $100,000 a year after their 2-year degree. So yeah, I mean, you put them on that on-ramp and off-ramp, education, work, education, work.
To do that.
Yeah. And you show them that,
you know, water operator, and then they want to move up, and then they do management, or they go
engineer, anything. Yeah.
Great idea.
Opportunities are endless. Yeah.
One thing that I say, and then Nick, I think you were next, and then Bill. One caution I would say, and we don't have to turn this into a big discussion, is, so we have been having discussions with the construction industry and some of the more traditional industries that I did notice on some of the calls. I watched a few of the leadership calls. You know, I'd say this right-hand column is really important as we think about this moving forward. Proudly take your seat at the table. Green is not just electric vehicles and impossible burgers. That's what they talk about a lot, but I think the water industry is part of the green industry. And don't box yourself in. Don't compete against necessarily fire and police as a community service. I saw Don's presentation, and I agreed with like 99.9% of it. The one point I didn't agree with is like, hey, we're in this competition with fire and police, and we're a valuable community service. I think that's great. What you're really competing with are these cool jobs, with parents in particular, these cool jobs of like, we're sending stuff to Mars, like Lockheed Martin, or biotech is creating the drugs of the future and synthetic organs, and robotics is doing amazing things. So I'd say tap into these wider relationships, but don't undersell yourselves as only, you know, great jobs with good benefits at a technical level. These are cool jobs. These are things when you actually understand the impact of the, sorry, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I feel like break that mindset of you're competing against fire and police. You're just as valid in industry as like sending stuff to space. And I think parents need to know that. Nick, sorry, I think you've been waiting for a while. Oh, yeah. Walter, if it's okay, can we get to Nick? He's had his hand up for a little bit.
Yeah, I want some very good comments. Thank you, Jeff. I want to bring up, you brought up an important question at the beginning, how to get students interested in the water and wastewater industry. A combination of things, tours, in-person and virtual, but Robert brought up the success stories. So videos of success stories of students that have gone through programs and are in the industry. John brought up importance to reach out to parents. Okay, as a teacher and as teachers, as parents probably know, school districts have school messenger alert where the school district can send out messages to all with links to all the parents. So if we could put together, we pool our resources and we have put together potentially videos, links, information on tours and so on, and get it to the school district and they send it out to all the parents through school messenger alert text messages with links, with a link. That's one way. The tours are very important. Where is the roadblock? The roadblock is that a lot of school districts don't have the money to pay for the buses. So if the water districts can pay for that, and I hope IRWD is doing that or can do that, but other districts as well, is pay for the buses and the transportation to get the students there. There's a lot of good ideas. I think this could all be brought together in a WEEA website and also outreach so that all of the different things that the different water districts are doing, the success stories, the tours, virtual and online, and outreach and apprentice programs could all be in one WEEA website resource and share that with the school districts and get it out to the parents through school messenger alert. That's my suggestion so far. Thank you.
So Nick, you kind of read my mind. I skipped ahead and I know we still have more questions. I jumped ahead a couple slides. So just to point out, this is where I think a strategy really helps, right? Is to your point, the website down bottom left, website with collected resources. There's lots of elements you already have. Like you're not really going to create a ton of new stuff. Nick's, that's a new idea that Nick had, but there's a lot of stuff that exists. So collect that, get it on a website. As you can see, the point earlier, you know, I listed parents a second. I think reaching students is key, reaching parents, reaching families. You can reach them through Earth Day, you reach schools and teachers. I'm not going to read all this, obviously. This is pretty logical. It's a way to really collectively come together, but I feel like starting with a strategy where you have a first draft and you're just debating what comes first and second is really key. Bill, go ahead. Sorry, your hand's up and been up for a while as well.
Sure. I was enjoying the comments and questions, John's question about how to get parents involved. And I think it's a good idea when you're first formulating these ideas to think about large umbrella organizations that already exist. And one that hasn't been mentioned today, but has been there for like decades, is called PTA, the Parent Teachers Association. And to me, it would be great to get them involved. There are also, some of them are called PTSA, so Parent Teacher Student Associations, but they're very invested in their kids and they work at local levels. There's over 1,000 school districts in California, because I used to work at the State Department of Education, right? And so in order to have that kind of outreach, it's really helpful to piggyback on Jeff, the idea here that was presented about getting some funding streams to go down to the local levels. That's a great way to get them to buy into, hey, let's do those parent-student tours, but we'll have a PTA person, the local chapter, the district president, go on that tour too. And one other individual that we talked about just very briefly earlier was the notion of counselors. And I really want to continue to try to emphasize that even though there's fewer of them nowadays in our high schools, especially, they too ought to be invited to those tours. That's where I'll stop.
Thanks. Yeah, and we are partnering with them to try to find out which experiences are the better experiences. It's sort of like the challenge that we have as we've talked to a few counselors is, every industry, because of the scale, the ratio, everybody is wanting to drop a brochure on their desk and expecting them to pay attention like they used to do in the old days. And it's a different profession for counselors, as you know, Bill. So we're trying to figure out how to keep them in the loop, but not bombard them.
Right.
Bruce, sorry, I think you were.
Thanks, Jeff. I'll try to keep this one short. As most of you know, all community college and K-12 CTE programs, which CTE is now as identified pathway within high schools more than transfer, or as much as transfer, require industry advisories. I got to tell you, my observation in the last years I've been working on regional projects is that you can make a lot of impact if you have an articulate representative, either as an intermediary or employer or HR person or anyone. Go attend those regional or district advisories. There's 2 or 3 a year. They have to have them. They got to know them. Most of the people who show up on them are bottom pickers who are trying to get the cream of the crop for whatever potential employees might be coming out of that program. But that doesn't mean that the professionals can't come in and make major influence. Oftentimes counselors are in attendance to those, always management's in attendance of those, and you can definitely impact the direction of the programs by just simply participating in a 2-hour donut and coffee class. I just throw it out as another, actually I put it as a challenge, but it's another option.
That's great. I'm writing that one down, Bruce, because I think I know a tiny bit about that, but it's one of those hidden resources that unless you're really immersed in it, you don't learn about. So that's fantastic. Walter, sorry, go ahead.
Hi, a couple of things I wanted to mention was that while we and I'm the president of CEF, which Bill is our CEO that basically set this up to start with about 4 years ago. But I wanted to mention that several participants in WEEA are what you'd call dual utilities. Like I'm with LADWP, so we're a water and electric utility, and I serve as the manager of education outreach. I serve both sides. And so what I always like to say is that both parts of our house are addressing environmental topics. Basically, our power side is focusing on, the state goal, and we're trying to actually be more aggressive in reaching 100% renewables, which is a huge environmental topic. And one that's maybe on the water side, not so well known, is that most water agencies with such, challenges of our precipitation and is addressing climate change by trying to wean ourselves off the aqueducts and to enhance local supply sources. So, and then climate change is also a huge issue. In fact, the LA Unified, I think the state has a new guideline or law or whatever, but LA Unified, the board passed about a couple of months ago instructional guidelines that every grade is supposed to address climate change from K to 12, and they already started moving their instructional program into that area. But I just want to mention, I wasn't sure also in terms of I was looking at the different industries and I didn't see you mention, power or electricity. Of course, it's more concentrated, they tend to be bigger organizations, but there are a lot of municipals, like, we in Southern California, there's like 10 municipal utilities that most of which are both water and electric. Glendale, Pasadena, Anaheim, Riverside, LA are all both. So just wanted to mention that too.
Yeah, it's a great point, Walter. And I definitely want to dig into the LA Unified instructional parts of that, because I feel like, we're huge. We don't like reinventing stuff. We like just saying, oh, look at look at what LA Unified is doing. Let's talk to like San Francisco, or let's talk to, I have a board member at San Francisco Unified, and maybe we can bring it to them. And so there's great opportunity there. What we do with when we were forming the 10 industries, or the 10 career groups, just so everybody has a sense of it, is this could quickly get out of hand as far as the number of industries. So we do a lot of work with construction and water and everything else, but we tried to group it under kind of macro categories. And clean tech and sustainability is where kind of water, power, and all those things fall under. Just like under advanced manufacturing, we have semiconductor, we have a lot of other kind of sub industries. Construction is under there and some other things. So, but otherwise, this would have been 40 industries, and that would have been pretty overwhelming for folks. So yeah, we definitely we're looking at it through the lens of clean tech and sustainability.
There's also on the CTE pathways, water, energy, and the environment. It covers both water and energy on that particular pathway.
Yeah, that's great.
It covers both sides of the house.
Yep, that's great. Two more quick things that I just wanted to go, because I know I'm coming up at the 45-minute mark. The one thing that I think we have been doing a ton of work in, and this doesn't represent a comprehensive list of organizations that we've been doing this with, but we do have something that's a pretty amazing way to get started, which is an experience week with teachers, where they come in, they learn firsthand about the careers, they do tours and panels and job shadows and things like that. We through the pandemic, we've done some of those virtually, but we like to do them in person as things get back to normal. It's essentially a week where they connect with the industry. They connect either with, like this is some of the work we've done with Baywork and Valley Water. They connect essentially with the careers that are out there and the people. They bring those lesson plans back to kids like we talked about before. And then in the classrooms, it becomes a little bit of like what I did on my summer vacation, and teachers communicate that enthusiasm about the industry. So one way, if we're not quite ready for a big strategy, I still think we could do both, but we could set up a few of these for folks who are interested in those. Emily put together an example from one of our last, I'm not sure if this is Valley Water, I can't remember which schedule this was from, but it was definitely a water and wastewater week. And this just gives you a sense, like we did the tours, we talked to the professionals, from an operator to a technician to coaching in the afternoon. So these are pretty successful, and we're doing a ton of these. This is what Emily's off doing today with the structural engineering folks. I mentioned the development strategy. These are some ideas on elements to include in audiences and stakeholders. One thing I wanted, but to connect back to Walter's thing, one thing I wanted to kind of mention, this was literally last week. So I was at, for those who know, Silicon Valley Leadership Group is a pretty well-known business collaborative group. They focus a lot on policy, but this just shows you that in some cases, water is already part of that larger green conversation. You can see like a lot of the speakers here, they had business, they had Al Gore there, which was interesting. They had a lot of the states there, and then they're down at the bottom, there's Rick, who interviewed Martha, the regional administrator for the EPA. And it was a great conversation. Obviously, Rick asked some water-based questions, but I was talking more about the overall environment. And to Walter's point, I think it was more energy. It was water and electricity and energy kind of all coming together in a forum. So people are really starting to think about this in a joined up way. And the last thing I'll leave you with is just some next steps. If there's interest in working on some industry water weeks, those are really easy to set up. We can start to build some of those out both for districts, or we can collaboratively do it with the team here. It's about building a consistent narrative with parents and students and teachers and everybody else. So it's a great way to kind of get started if there's interest there. But what I'd really be excited about is, could we start to put some of these ideas down on paper? And I will volunteer my time to start putting down a first draft. If we wanted to have something to review in a shared collaborative document in the next couple of weeks, we can just start to get these into shared goals. And there's no commitment. It's just much more of like, let's start. We believe in getting it down on paper so you're not working with a blank sheet of paper. So I will personally volunteer time to start fleshing out some of these ideas and really linking up green jobs and green tech and helping you amplify the industry we're totally on board for whatever we can do to collaborate and partner. And I'm confident we can help in whatever way would work best for you. All right, Tiffany.
Jeff, that last part really made my heart flutter because this is really what we hope to do. And I think, you know, back in 2018, when we talked about building this collaborative and Bill's idea of bringing us all together, because there's a disconnect between what educators need, what industry needs, and truly there's a disconnect between each other. And for those who work with me, I love your approach. Partnerships are the key. You can do great things, but you can do exceptional things together. You can work really hard to have people engaged in what you're doing, but when you build out this network, you're so powerful and we're going to get so much further. We've heard a lot about how things are not consistent, and that has been a problem, again, with educators and there's challenges building programs, again, with industry and our ability to step up and provide the missing links. If we have a cohesive, collective understanding and goal, we're going to reach that much quicker, and we're going to be able to help each other instead of competing against each other. And I can tell you, when we're talking about equity and we're looking for where the students live that we're trying to reach, where the training opportunities are versus where the job opportunities are, it just doesn't make sense. How are students who we're trying to reach who are underserved going to apply for a training? Let's say they live in San Bernardino, apply for a training in Orange County, and then the job is in LA. It just doesn't make any sense. But if we do this collectively, we have consistency and we're able to offer very clear pathways and we're able to design them. I think that's another thing that I really got from your presentation. You know, we talk about the fight for talent and we're up against the problem of lack of skills, lack of knowledge, lack of culture. If we build that culture together, we'll always have talent, and we'll have talent that meets all of our needs, not just one service area, not just, you know, somewhere obscure, but we're helping each other grow our industry, and we'll have a large talent pool to choose from. If we collectively work together to drive students to our industry, we'll have even more students interested. When we're competing against each other, we're not going to get very far. And that is pretty proven over, you know, the several years where we're desperate to make sure that we're the ones standing out in front.
Yeah, two really
that's
quick,
what I got.
two really quick points with Tiffany is I think that's a perfect way to say it, because I always laugh. I'm this is going to sound very mafia-like, but you know, the important thing is to get them in the family. You know, we used to say this at Lockheed, is how do we compete against Google's and Facebook when we were there? And aerospace is, they're sending people to, you know, they're sending stuff to Mars and exploring the universe. They should be capturing talent like crazy, but they have a similar silver tsunami situation like the water industry. And so it's this collective thing of, let's fight the fight of getting them in the energy and sustainability and green tech family. Even better, let's get them in the water and wastewater family. But once they're in, then you'll have a much bigger talent pool to pick from. But if they're tempted by financial services, or they're tempted by aerospace or semiconductor, that get them in the family first, and then you'll have a much bigger pool to pull from. And that's an important kind of mindset to be in, I think, because you are in direct competition with other massive industries who are doing exactly the same stuff I just talked about. So in a way, it's, you know, who becomes Ronda Rousey first and is ready to make the knockout punch. Like, that's, I hate to say it so directly, but we work with all these other industries, so I can say firsthand that's what's happening. And then the other thing that I'd say as a point of thought for everybody is, it's easy to contemplate this stuff. I can tell you that the step up stuff that we've built, we did this with the idea, with these partnerships and this collaborative, In 12 to 14 months, we've essentially been able to scale this thing from non-existent to probably 15 partners. We've raised about I think it's $4.2 million now. We have 3 federal grants, one with the Navy, one with APA, one with NOAA, a few state grants, a few company grants. We've just decided, like, we create the strategy, we get people to react. We don't move quickly for the sake of moving quickly. What we do is we put things on paper and we debate it and we make a decision, and then we learn, and then we go for money. And I think when I look at a strategy for your industry, it's the same thing. If we just get it on paper, we take all the pieces that you already have and we just kind of structure the puzzle, you've already got everything you need. You just need a document and a way to write the funding to just really have this thing take off. And I'd use our example with Step Up. That works. You know, we're on target to hit about 10, well, I'd hope we hit about $10 million in funding for this thing at the end of 2 years, which people tell me is a pretty good rate of growth for something that's relatively new. And I think you've got the same opportunities for the water and wastewater industry.
I agree. And I think if we can get focused and we can get organized, not only are we going to help ourselves, but we're going to help a lot of kids.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Particularly kids who never see this stuff. That's the other thing that I'd say is part of the goal that we have with this is, you know, we work with Palo Alto, we work with some really well-resourced districts. That's all great, but it's for us, it's sort of, you know, there's districts that are here that because their parents, you know, are working 3 jobs to make ends meet, you know, they don't have time to talk to their kids about careers, or their schools are struggling to get equipment and basic stuff. So, I mean, you guys all know that.
Yeah.
But I think
that's true. And then on top of that, I don't think we're doing I love the presentation that talks about quit trying to compete with fire and police. I mean, we're really at the point where we're kind of trying everything, and something's, oh yes, we should do that because we are an essential service. Oh no, we should do that because, you know, we are, you know, foundational and nobody can live without us. But there's a lot more to our industry, guys. We're water. Water is in everything, around everything, is needed for life. And there are so many cool careers, not just the ones that we've been focused on, which is the career technical education portion, but jobs like accounting for those who never thought they could do that, but they're good at math, or communications for those who just love talking to people and didn't even know there was a career like that out there. Not only can they get in the industry that they love or the career that they love, but then they can get into an industry that's stable, that's secure, that offers all of the things that make us all stay here for 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we're up against our break. So are there any more questions before we go to our break? Any hands? I told you this was a lively bunch. You didn't even get through your presentation.
That's great. No, I got the key parts. That was fantastic.
I'm very engaged. Everyone here is here because we want to know more and we want to do something. So thank you all for your participation, and thank you, Jeff, for your presentation. Okay, we're ready for a 10-minute break. Let's come back at 11:01. These are questions for the breakout rooms, and every breakout room is going to have a note taker. So obviously we have the Padlet link here if you'd like to contribute yourself to the Padlet, or we have our note takers that will frantically take notes in the room. And as always, we're going to keep these open for a couple of days. So as you continue to have ideas, or maybe something spurs your creativity in the breakout rooms, come back and fill it in, because as Jeff said, and what we try to do is we try and document all of this, so we don't always go backwards and start from square one. We have these Padlet discussions from quite a ways back, and I love the idea of building an outline or an action plan for us collaboratively. I just love it. I think we have the same goals. It's just a matter of how we're putting ourselves up front versus collectively making this agreement that this is what we'd like to see moving forward and helping our industry out. So everyone, come back from that break. We're going to go ahead and enter our breakout rooms. As mentioned, we have a smaller group than we usually do, a lot of vacations, a lot of competing meetings. The good news is we always share these resources with those who register, and we post the video on the current WEEA website. And then I can imagine that Jeff and myself and Amy and anyone else who are in our environmental literacy Green Careers Innovation Hub will also be sharing this information with our network so that we can continue this discussion and build upon it, because it's really important. So everyone kind of has an opportunity to select their own. We had quite a few people who were joining from statewide organizations and a couple who were joining us from up north. Additionally, we've lost one of our regional leads for San Diego. We had a couple of San Diego folks, so we're going to combine San Diego with Orange County. So our 3 breakout rooms are Los Angeles, Inland Empire, and Orange County, San Diego. So go ahead and select your room. We're going to go ahead and call on our regional leads now, the people who are leading the discussion, to give their impressions of what the discussions were in each of the breakout rooms. John, you want to go first?
Sure. Let me get my notes up here.
Yes, and I'll try and share that Padlet to make it a little easier.
So, yeah, we had some really great conversations around what everyone's priorities are. Of course, it's workforce development, but from IRWD, they're trying to think out of the box, working with community colleges, social media groups. WaterWise Pro now teaches training programs. I'm not sure, I didn't get the gist of that one, but working at the high school level. That was a common theme. Working with parents, getting out to high school, doing tours, and getting more family involvement was also one of the points. Attracting and retaining talented people, of course. One of the difficulties that was brought up was the inability, because of the cost of living, for transportation and whatnot, to get people where they need to be to participate. And with that same focus, they're working with public agencies to develop affordable housing and to build equity into their programs and into their employment, their HR departments, to foster a healthy work-life balance. That was another point that was brought up. And Nick brought up a good point about not to overlook our retirees. Since we're having the great resignation, which came up several times, we have to look back at them and remind them that there is an opportunity for some part-time work if they're interested, or once they're done fishing, to come back and teach. We always need teachers in our program. So there's another opportunity there for folks coming out of the water industry. And then one of the things that Joyce brought up, Joyce Foss, was we have an $18 million grant, K through 16 grant. So there's an opportunity there to build a water pathway from our high schools to our colleges and to employment. And one of the opportunities that we talked about there was kind of building on that scholarship idea, because these funds can be used for scholarships, which is unique. This is really the first time that I know of that state funds could be used for that. So we should absolutely take hold of that opportunity and see what we can do to start building a cohort for 2025, where you would have fully trained technicians and water resource folks for the back office jobs. So there's some opportunities there. And that's the K through 16 grant, and Joyce Foss is the contact. I do believe that her link is in the chat there. I think that kind of covered it. Tiffany, did I miss anything?
That was a good summary, John. Thank you for that. Bruce, LA.
Hi, Tiffany. Thank you very much. we kind of flipped the menu a little bit. We first talked about priorities, and generally we start talking about priorities. You generally spend some time on successes. So it was not so much a priority exercise as maybe some things that we've done. But then we, towards the latter half of the meeting, we decided we better come up with some kind of a goal. and fortunate for me, the majority of the participants were agency folks from several different agencies. And so I think we reached a consensus that, and we should probably do it on a statewide basis, but we could do it on a more regional basis, SoCal type basis, is that somehow get lists of or descriptions of under some format of all the collateral, of primarily the videos, but collateral material, websites, et cetera, that we might have at each of these different agencies, because we talked probably, what I overheard, adding up in my head, 20 or 30 different videos that are in 4 different agencies right here within stone's throw where I work. So there might be just, the objective might be just to try and catalog and index those things as to whatever keywords might be necessary. I'm not an expert in that social media piece, but we should probably develop a catalog that then could be either published or distributed with interagency or to schools or whatever stakeholders we might have. So that was the takeaway, I think. If someone else had something to add, I more than invited, because but I think we got it.
It's a really great point. I noticed that, one agency will get inspired and say, well, we're going to do videos. We did it. Get inspired. We're going to do this, but maybe the videos already exist. Maybe if we build out this WEEA website appropriately, we can showcase all of our agencies and their videos. If you're interviewing a wastewater treatment plant operator, and maybe we've got 2 or 3 videos, but how cool would that be for teachers to be able to share those videos instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. So I think it's a great focus. Bill.
Thanks. Yes, we had a really good conversation. A couple of interesting things surfaced. One was, trying to work with the rather clunky CTE system right now, and looking at how instead do we work directly with the teachers to infuse some of these different careers into the existing curriculum. And so, of course, that led to a discussion about having teachers write curriculum. And then the counterpoint to that is there's already good activities written by, for instance, Project WET. And there's also some water-related lessons in Project WILD and Project Learning Tree. Those have all been thoroughly researched, and is already a statewide facilitation network of educators to help train teachers how to use those activities. For instance, CEEP does a Teacher Institute every year, and we bring in the Project WET coordinator for the whole state, and he helps lead them through a Project WET activity. And we've also gotten a couple of water educators within Southern California to do other WET activities to train those teachers to use those activities. So rather than having teachers spend time writing curriculum and saying, heck, use the curriculum that's already been developed, and they said, well, what is it correlated to different areas beyond science? And the answer is yes. In the back of the Project WET Guide 2.0, it's got it correlated to history, social science, and math, English, etc., and GSS. So that was one lively discussion that was, I think, helpful. And we realized that any curriculum that is introduced to a school classroom typically has to be approved by not only your site principal, but sometimes even by the school district. And those are sometimes very, very strict guidelines. So just a heads up on that. But any kind of curriculum that gets written has to be standards-based. That was a minimum. In terms of priorities, Amanda brought out that they've had a very successful water education program from a number of years, but this coming year, they're transitioning to a career focus, which is wonderful. And I think that they want to be looking at water, workforce pathways. And then there was also some discussion about some of the teachers that are getting trained at 18 years old or past. I mean, not teachers being trained, but student graduates that are entering into some CTE workforce pathways, to engage them in mentorships for new students that are starting to get into that. That's really an exciting way to do that. And they're capturing the successful jobs that are being landed by these students that are going through some of the community college programs and are getting good paying careers. Is there anything else that we should bring out, Amanda, or any of those other folks that were in there, Scott?
I think you covered it, Bill.
Great.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it sounds like we're we keep having these really great conversations and we can keep building on them. What I really like is that we're moving forward and getting a little more focused. One of the things I'd like to do this upcoming fiscal year is create a template that's an action plan for us to make sure that we're even more focused and we can agree upon specifics. And at that point, we become responsible for tasks within that, and they don't have to be super lofty, but we're all still moving forward in the direction that we need to be moving. You've known this for a long, long time. We really, not only are these meetings very interactive, but we also want an action plan. We want you to feel empowered to take the next step. And if that means joining forces with someone else in your region or outside of your region, or maybe learning from our speakers and saying, you know what, I think that might work. Let me present that to leadership. That's really what we're hoping to do, make those connections so we can keep advancing forward. We never want to just stay in one place. So we're going to really think about this meeting and really work to make sure that that's streamlined a bit so we can really hone in on what we're trying to accomplish. We only have a few minutes left. I know nobody starts crying when we leave a little early. So is there anything else that anyone wants to talk about before we close our meeting?
Tiffany, quickly, the grant that Joyce mentioned, I think it is from Orange County Department of Education.
Yep.
That's in the chat. So everybody, that grant is $18 million and the deadline is July 22nd. So that if you want to, people should be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nick. Anyone else for the good of the cause?
Hey, Tiffany, it's Mara here. Can you hear me? I just want to say that I'd be interested in having a conversation with others about starting a Northern California chapter of WEEA. So I'll be working with Robert. Hopefully Jeff and Emily can join in on that conversation as well too. Here at Valley Water, we're looking to establish a career pathways program. So this was impeccable timing. And really enjoyed listening to what other people are doing down in Southern California and maybe connecting with some people down in the SoCal area who are already doing this very successfully too. So I just want to say thank you for that. And Jeff, I'll be in touch with you about our Northern California chapter.
Couldn't we just, Mayor, what do you think about just we expanding WEEA to be statewide?
I think that's amazing as well too, Walter. I definitely feel that here in the Northern California Bay Area as well, there are some definite opportunities. I heard Jeff mention, aerospace industry. We have several NASA centers that are here as well too. So really wanting to expand that conversation, I think a bit deeper as well. But yes, Walter, I definitely agree that a statewide WEEA is important because, we're one water. And even looking at some of the other agencies like One Water and see what they're doing as well to just kind of make it a more solidified united front here as we're fighting the good fight that Jeff was talking about earlier.
Mira, thank you for your comments. It's so good to see you. It's been forever. So thank you for coming today. And as you continue that conversation, if there's anything that we can do to help forge the way, or obviously Baywork has been a huge inspiration for us when we started really small and we've grown quite a bit. So again, together we're much, much stronger. So however we can help you as you move forward, please let me know.
And Tiffany, if I could just add real quick for the Orange County contingent, don't be intimidated by the July 22nd date on that grant application. We really just have to come up with a kind of a whiteboard plan and potential participants by the 22nd and get it's a very simple application, and then we can develop it out more further beyond that date. So just don't be afraid to contact me or Joyce, and let's put something together. We've got the money there. We've got a potential to build a pathway right into your district. So let's get together.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Okay, so we're going to close right on time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We always like to give you the next meeting date so you can put it on your calendar. Leadership Roundtable number 12, October 18th from 9 to 12. We always think, oh, no, not a 3-hour meeting, but these go pretty quickly. And I think we have some really good conversations that inspire us to do the next thing. So last shout out to our 2021-22 WEEA sponsors: Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Molten Miguel Water District, Water Replenishment District of Southern California, California Environmental Education Foundation, Western Municipal Water District, Big Picture Learning, California Community Colleges, and starting in just a few weeks, Eastern Municipal Water District. So thank you all for attending. Please let us know if you have any questions. You know how to reach me.
Tiffany, thank you for capturing Jeff. It was a great presentation. It was very informative, and it looks like they're a little bit ahead of us up there.
Oh, well, I'll take all the credit for that, Jeff, if you don't mind.
No, happy to share. And just a side note, the K-16 thing is happening across the state. So to Tiffany and John's point, if there's learnings from the K-16 stuff happening in Northern California, happy to contribute as well. But it just goes to show, like, you can blanket the state with a lot of this, and there's money out there to be had. So, but I'm happy to talk to everybody, and thanks Bruce and crew. We love the water industry, so whatever we can do to help.
Hey, well, thank you, Jeff. If there's anything you can send me on those programs further up the state on the K-16 front, do share, because I love to borrow content.
Sounds great.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Great job.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you.